I want to talk to you a little bit about a book that's actually made a lot of waves within the blogosphere. This book by Rob Bell called Love Wins. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, this book is a big deal because it has some actually fairly controversial issues in it. It does talk about heaven and hell, but Rob Bell takes a decidedly different point of view than, say, what you would hear in many traditional churches. Just to give you a flavor, let me show you a clip from the promo of the book, and we'll talk about a couple of pieces in here. Hold on.
Several years ago, we had an art show at our church, and people brought in all kinds of sculptures and paintings, and we put them on display, and there was this one piece that had a quote from Gandhi in it. And lots of people found this piece compelling. They'd stop and sort of stare at it and take it in or reflect on it, but not everybody found it that compelling. Somewhere in the course of the art show, somebody attached a handwritten note to the piece, and on the note, they had written, "Reality check. He's in hell." Gandhi's in hell? He is? And someone knows this for sure and felt the need to let the rest of us know? Will only a few select people make it to heaven? And will billions and billions of people burn forever in hell? And if that's the case, how do you become one of the few? Is it what you believe or what you say or what you do or who you know or something that happens in your heart? Or do you need to be initiated or baptized or take a class or converted or being born again? How does one become one of these few? And then there is the question behind the questions, the real question, what is God like? Because millions and millions of people were taught that the primary message, the center of the gospel of Jesus, is that God is going to send you to hell unless you believe in Jesus. And so what gets subtly sort of caught and taught is that Jesus rescues you from God. But what kind of God is that we would need to be rescued from this God? How could that God ever be good? How could that God ever be trusted? And how could that ever be good news? This is why lots of people want nothing to do with the Christian faith. They see it as an endless list of absurdities and inconsistencies, and they say, why would I ever want to be a part of that? See, what we believe about heaven and hell is incredibly important because it exposes what we believe about who God is and what God is like. What you discover in the Bible is so surprising, unexpected, and beautiful that whatever we've been told or taught, the good news is actually better than that, better than we could ever imagine. The good news is that love wins.
This wouldn't be a big deal if Rob Bell was just an author, just a gentleman who's putting out his opinion. Rob Bell happens to be the pastor of a mega Christian church in Michigan with about 10,000 people in attendance. What concerns me is some of the positions he takes in this book. Now, granted, you can't judge everything by the trailer, but the trailer is reflective of a lot of what is going on in the book Love Wins. Like I said, I want to talk about this, and I think that there's a lot of confusion about what hell is and what we should understand it to be. So first, let's look at our passage, and then we'll explore some of these questions that Rob Bell has been asked. There was a rich man who would dress in purple and fine linen, feasting lavishly every day. But a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, was left at his gate. He longed to be filled with what fell from the rich man's table, but instead the dogs would come and lick his sores. One day the poor man died and was carried away by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. And being in torment in Hades, he looked up and saw Abraham a long way off with Lazarus at his side. "Father Abraham," he called out, "have mercy on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this flame." "Son," Abraham said, "remember that during your life you received your good things, just as Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here while you are in agony. Beside all this, a great chasm has been fixed between us and you, so that those who want to pass over from here to you cannot. Neither can those from there cross over here. Father, he said, then I beg you to send him to my father's house, because I have 5 brothers, to warn them, so they won't also come to this place of torment. But Abraham said, they have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them. No, Father Abraham, he said, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent. But he told him, if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be persuaded if someone rises from the dead. Rob Bell, there's some things I agreed with him. He said that it matters greatly what you believe about hell. It shapes people's lives. I agree with that. I think that many times we fail to realize how much our understanding of hell is colored by popular literature, even old literature, even stuff from the Middle Ages, Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost by Milton. This is where we get the whole devil and pitchforks kinds of ideas. They tend to color our biblical doctrines. Bell says, this is why lots of people want nothing to do with the Christian faith. They see it as an endless list of absurdities and inconsistencies, and they want no part of that. Hell is an endless list of absurdities and inconsistencies. Well, then it's up to us as Christians to straighten that view out. I believe he's right. I believe a lot of people understand hell in this. So you see the problem. Is the concept of hell inconsistent or a contradiction to the idea of God? Is it better than what we think, as Rob Bell claims? Is Gandhi burning in hell? Is that unjust on God's part? Bell's entire first chapter is littered with questions. Why wouldn't God judge Satan before he made people? You see, all of these objections that are raised are actually objections against the nature of God himself. And that's an important point to remember. If God is all-loving, and God is holy, and God is a just God, then, as in Bell's words, what kind of God is it that we would need to be rescued from this God? How could God ever be this good? How could God ever be trusted if he sends people to hell? Well, as you study the doctrine of hell, you'll find that we can answer these charges. And what I want to do is I want to look at these main 4 areas, these main 4 questions, and see how we can approach the doctrine of hell. And the first one, the primary one, is why would God create hell to begin with? For crying out loud, why even start there? Obviously, in our story of the rich man and Lazarus, you see an idea of punishment. Now, in this story, we have to understand what hell is and how the Bible portrays hell. And there's a couple of words, actually there's several words that have been used, translated into hell, and others that have alluded to hell. The first is the Hebrew Sheol. This is pretty consistent throughout the Old Testament. Sheol basically is the concept of the abode of the dead, the rich man and Lazarus that we read. It tends to be down there in the earth. Sometimes it's called the grave. If you're reading the Psalms, the idea it has a place of torment for the wicked. Numbers 16:33, Job 24:19, Psalm 9, verse 17, and others. But it also, in other Psalms, talk about as a common grave for all mankind, such as Psalm 16:10, Isaiah 38:10, and even Psalm 30, verse 3. So you have the abode of the dead, where all dwell, but there seems to be an area of torment for the evil, for the wicked. And the Greek Hades is similar, and Hades is the word that we read in our story today. Usually, when they were translating the Septuagint, when they were translating the Old Testament into Greek, even prior to Jesus' lifetime, they would use the Greek word Hades for the Hebrew word Sheol. So a lot of it is parallel. And you can see how there seems to be 2 compartments. As we read, Abraham says there's a great chasm. Now, is that a literal chasm, or is that just an idea that there's an impenetrable, impassable barrier? We don't know. But it's used throughout the New Testament as a concept of hell. Another Greek word, though, beyond Hades, is the Greek word Gehenna. Gehenna, which is basically, the literal meaning is the Valley of Hinnom. Now, the Valley of Hinnom was outside Jerusalem. And as many of you probably know, it was the trash dump for the city. This is where everybody would come and throw their garbage. was in the Valley of Hinnom. And there were fires that were burning because of the trash. And sometimes you can actually get a spontaneous combustion as trash starts to decompose and compact. It actually generates heat and can burst into flame. But in the Valley of Hinnom, that fire never went out. There was always so much trash. It was always burning. It was always filthy, and smoke was rising from it. So you see that Jesus used this as an apt parable when he starts to talk to people, like Matthew chapter 5, from verses 22 to 30, where the fire is never put out and the worm ceases not. Mark 9, 43 through 47. Luke chapter 12, verse 5, and James 3, 6. You have this idea of this burning, this eternal fire. Two other words that we sometimes see. Abaddon, which is it's a Hebrew word kind of connected with Sheol. You see it in Revelation 9:11. The Abaddon concept comes out. That's actually the Greek, where the locusts are sent, or when the bottom of the pit. The angel goes and unlocks the pit, and these locusts come out to scourge the earth. That's the word Abaddon. And then Tartarus, and this word is only used one time in the entire Scripture, and that's in 2 Peter 2:4, talking about a specific group of angels. Peter writes, "For God did not spare the angels that sinned, but threw them into Tartarus, and delivered them to be kept in the chains of darkness until judgment." Now, in the Greek world, the concept of Tartarus was a place actually below Hades. It was actually a worse condition to be in. It was probably one of the most emphatic, one of the darkest places you could find in the Greek mythology. So you see that there's a distinction here between Hades and Gehenna. Hades and Sheol is the place of the dead. It contains Abraham's bosom, where Lazarus finds comfort and rest, and it also contains a place of suffering for those who are wicked. And this is because, and we'll get to this in a minute, before the debt for sin was paid on the cross, all people had to be in some way separated from God in his heaven. They could not have immediate fellowship with God because they all still had a count of sin against them. See, when Jesus comes and dies on the cross, and this is the big message about Easter, he covers the sins of all mankind, past, present, and future. And this is why he says to the thief on the cross, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And so at that point, Jesus ushers the faithful into the loving relationship with the Father. So what theologians tell us today is basically that the Abraham's bosom area of Sheol is emptied, because now we have immediate access to the Father. There is, one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Jesus Christ. Paul says to live is Christ, to die is gain. So your first breath, or your last breath here, would be your first breath in heaven, so to speak. In the evil side, so to speak, the side where the wicked are punished, though, those people remain right about until Revelation 20, verse 13, when death and hell are opened up. All the people, great and small, are resurrected before the great white throne judgment in Revelation 20, and then they are all cast into the outer darkness, into like the Gehenna, where they will be weeping and gnashing of teeth forever, is the way it's portrayed. So the lake of fire, so to speak, is there. So there's a distinction between Hades and Gehenna that the biblical writers make. And again, it's not, we tend to picture heaven as one place and hell as one place, and it's actually a little bit different. Actually, heaven, and I should do this teaching sometime, most people don't realize that heaven eventually will be back on earth. It's going to be a new earth, new heavens and a new earth, but we will live with God forever. That's Revelation 21 and 22. It's not jumping from cloud to cloud playing harps, believe it or not.